Hello and welcome to the show. My name's Sam with Philosophy Tree. Today we're going to be looking at ethics. We're going to be first defining and distinguishing ethics as a field of study within philosophy, and then we're going to be looking at some popular ethical questions and different responses to those questions. So the field of ethical philosophy really tries to answer two questions. The first being, what behaviors are right and wrong? And then with the answer to this question and the knowledge of right and wrong behaviors, it moves on to, well, how should humans live based on this? How should we act day to day? An important point to make before we move on is the distinction between ethics and morals. In our current day and age, ethics and morals are used synonymously. These two words are often used to mean the same thing. And they do overlap considerably. Many behaviors that are immoral are also unethical to people. However, they are by no means synonyms. The simplest and clearest way to illustrate the difference between morals and ethics is that morals relate to the individual, while ethics relate to groups and societies. Morals concern personal beliefs about right and wrong. A moral statement would be like, I believe it is wrong to murder. An ethical statement would be, it is wrong to murder, thus if you murder you will be sent to jail for life, etc. And so many behaviors that are immoral, such as murder, are also unethical. But not all. Let's take the issue of, say, premarital sex. Some people believe that it is immoral to have premarital sex. They have a personal belief that it is wrong to have sex before marriage. However, at least in the United States from where I'm speaking, it is not unethical to have premarital sex. You will not be, say, thrown in jail or penalized or fired from your job from engaging in that activity. Even though it might be immoral, it is not unethical. And so morals are more relative to the individual, while ethics are applied universally to whatever organization or society or state they pertain to. Most companies, for example, have a code of ethics that all employees must follow. And if you don't follow that code of ethics, you could be terminated from your job. Similarly, most governments have codes of ethics called their laws, and if you don't follow those laws, you can be penalized or thrown in prison or even killed sometimes. And so the study of ethics is absolutely imperative in philosophy, because when we make rules about how humans should act, and we enforce them with the authority of a state or an organization with such penalties and such consequences, we need to make sure that these rules are being based on sound moral principles and on correct definitions of right and wrong conduct. Within the field of ethics, there are three branches, three areas of study. The first and the most broad being metaethics. In metaethics, we don't necessarily ask questions about what should I do or how should people act in society. We ask questions about larger concepts, about larger definitions, such as what is goodness, what is truth, what is right and what is wrong. And so by answering these questions and by establishing these concepts, we are able to conduct the latter two branches, normative ethics and applied ethics. And once we draw conclusions and come to answers from metaethics on these definitions and these larger concepts of right and wrong and good and evil, we can conduct normative ethics. Normative ethics is what most people think of when they think of the study of ethics. It's the study of how people should act generally. And lastly, there is applied ethics. Applied ethics is essentially normative ethics. However, it asks questions about how we should act with regard to specific issues or in specific situations. When you think of this, just think of politics. If someone is pro something or anti something, that is an applied ethical stance. And most ethical questions deal with all three. And so I think it's best to work from the most precise, being applied ethics, to the broadest branch of study, being metaethics. And I have an example of this over to the right. And so if you look at the bottom, the question is, should women have the freedom to get an abortion, to terminate their pregnancy? This deals with a specific issue and a specific situation, so this is an applied ethical question. However, we can delve deeper into this and go to the normative ethics question above it. If we want to ask, should women have the freedom to get an abortion, we'd also have to ask, do individuals have absolute freedom over their own bodies? And if the answer to that is yes, then women would most likely have the freedom to get an abortion. If the answer is no, then the answer might be no, might be yes, depending on your opinion of it. And above normative ethics, we have metaethics. And remember, Metaethics deals with definitions and broad concepts. So the metaethical question in regard to this situation is, what do we mean by freedom? We first have to define freedom if we're going to be talking about, do individuals have freedom over their own bodies, or even to the most precise question, should women have the freedom to get an abortion? So with this knowledge of applied ethics, drawing on normative ethics, drawing on metaethics, we can look for specific issues and specific ethical questions which occur mainly in the news media or popular culture, and we can dissect them and examine them to find the larger ethical issues within. We already talked about the issue of abortion, but another contemporary issue which many people have strong opinions on is the issue of the death penalty, whether or not the death penalty should be enforced for certain heinous crimes. And when we talk about this applied ethical issue of the death penalty, certainly several normative ethical questions arise. However, the one that sticks out the most, at least for me, is the question of whether murder is sometimes justified. If you would answer yes to the question, is murder sometimes justified, such as in the instances of serial killing, other heinous crimes, etc., then you would presumably not have a problem with the death penalty. You would view it as justifiable. You would say that people who commit these heinous crimes deserve to die, perhaps, or that it is the lesser of the two evils to prevent even more criminals from doing this. But if you'd answer no to the question, is murder sometimes justifiable, then you would have a problem with the death penalty. You would view the death penalty as just as much murder as the murder these criminals commit, that it is simply murder by the state, and that it is never justified to take the life of another human being, no matter whether they are a criminal or not. Whether you answered no or yes to the question, is murder ever justifiable, you would still have to ask the deeper, broader, metaethical question of what is justice. We have to understand what justice is if we're going to arrive at the answer of, is murder ever justifiable? Little side note here. If you haven't yet seen our video on Book 1 of Plato's Republic, I highly encourage you to do so after this, because the central question in that book is, what is justice? Plato delves into it very deeply, and we try to condense it into a quick summary, but you might learn something. For the purposes of this discussion, however, we might say justice is an eye for an eye, and according to that concept, if you take someone else's eye out, you should have your eye taken out. And so by the same logic, if you murder someone else, you should be murdered. If you steal a certain amount of money from someone, they should take that same amount of money from you. And so it's this reciprocal relationship of justice, which isn't necessarily concerned about the ultimate good or ultimate morality of the situation, but simply balancing out the evil. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting the show. We try to have episodes out on a weekly basis. In the meantime, you can follow us on Twitter at philosophy_tree and like our page on Facebook at facebook.com/philosophytree. You can also check out our website if you'd like. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even any ideas for future shows, please feel free to contact us at philosophytreecontact@gmail.com. Also, you can go through our website or through any of our social networks. We really do appreciate your feedback, and we thank you tremendously.